So I feel sorry for our next two speakers who have to follow that. I certainly wouldn't want to. That's why I got my stuff out of the way first. Could we have Mr. Campbell, Mr. Kwadjo Campbell, to the stage, please? He's the CEO of JC and Associates, local activist, and he's got a wealth of political experience throughout this state. Look forward to hearing from you.
Good morning. All right, first of all, let me thank the Chairman, Bill Kilmer, for inviting me to be with you today. I want to thank you all for having me. All right, so I also want to give thanks to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and my Almighty, because He's the reason I'm standing here before you today. I'm here, and I was invited to talk about the Black agenda. It is a pressing need that we as Democrats begin to address the Black agenda so that we can energize the African American community so that they can see in our policies, in our messaging themselves, so that they are encouraged and they're excited to turn out to vote. We've noticed numbers. I was just a part of a faith-based breakfast in Charleston with ministers. The Bishop Green was there, and they put up on a slide, and they showed how African-American voting percentage continues to decrease with election after election after election. And it is my argument that if we address the African-American, the Black agenda, and talk about these issues, that we will get our people excited. But so before I go into the heart of that message, if I may just tell you a little bit about myself. Bill asked me to tell a little bit about my history. So I myself, Kwadjo Campbell, I'm a former student activist, soldier in the United States Marine Corps, and I've been a politician, and currently I'm an entrepreneur and a school teacher. So back in high school, this young man reminds me a little bit of myself back then. I was editor of the school newspaper, the Parvenu, and there came an issue where I wanted to talk about the conditions of our school. So I went to Burke High School. I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina. And Burke High School is downtown Charleston. Compared to all the other schools, we were underfunded. We had, in the wintertime, our school classrooms were really cold. We had to walk to school when it rained. I don't know if you know anything about downtown Charleston, but it floods a lot. So we would have to walk through that water to get to our school. And so I wanted to write about it. And the school told me I couldn't speak about it. And so what I did is I created what was called the Black Panther newsletter, and got in a lot of trouble for doing that. But somebody from the community, local radio station, heard about it and brought me on the radio station, and we talked about it. And lo and behold, all that attention got some things done. I was also approached at that time by a guy named Marion Welch, Black Voter Participation Coalition in Charleston, and as a senior, asked me to join that. And so I started, getting involved with politics, registering voters, and introducing myself into that. Well, after that, I went to the Marine Corps, went to Desert Storm, went overseas, and when I came back, I went to the College of Charleston, where I became a student activist again. I was president of the Black Student Union. I'm also president of the NAACP. I'm also an artist, so we write plays and do poetry, and so we created an African-American performance troupe. And the whole idea of our art is we wanted it to be functional. We wanted to tell the stories about the needs and aspirations of the African-American community, and so even through our art, we were giving back to our community. We were pushing issues. In doing that, I was introduced again into politics. And so as a student, we started a nonprofit organization called the East on campus. And so we used College of Charleston resources to do work in the community. And so we started an after-school program. And so we end up being in all of the public housing complexes in Charleston. So we would use college vans to take college students to the after-school centers in public housing. There was about 5 of them in downtown Charleston. And through that, we started doing voter registration in those communities and doing cultural programs and block parties and et cetera. And so a guy by the name of Mayor Joseph P. Riley was running for re-election, and a young woman who was working on his campaign came in and recruited me and asked me if I would do those things I was doing in those communities for the campaign. And that's how I got introduced to the Democratic Party. And I ended up becoming the second vice chair for Charleston County Democratic Party, and eventually I ran for city council, and I won. And so on city council, we did some pretty progressive things. We passed a affordable housing bond. At the time, Charleston was going through a thing called gentrification, and no one was talking about gentrification. No one was talking about the inequities that was taking place in Charleston. Literally, we were losing our communities. We were losing our traditional homesteads, and no one was talking about it. The elected officials weren't talking about it because we had a Democratic mayor. We had a Democratic council, and to criticize gentrification was to criticize the administration. And so I became a thorn in the side of the administration, of our Democratic administration, because of these issues. And even to this day, I say that I would still have been there if I had not made some personal mistakes, right? And so what eventually ended up happening, I did 2 terms on city council, but I was young and dumb sometimes, right? And so I was charged with possession of marijuana and campaign finance laws because I didn't keep good books and whatnot. And I left my office. I moved to Virginia with my wife, who was working as a planning and zoning administrator there. And eventually we came back to South Carolina, moved to Greenville, where I went back to school, got my master's degree at Clemson in education through a program called Call Me Mister. And I became an educator. And at the same time, I started my consulting firm, JC and Associates. We had been doing community economic development. We had been doing political campaigns. We had been doing planning work in the community. So me and my wife formed this consulting firm. And so just to move it forward a little bit, in education, it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience for me. I won Teacher of the Year in 2015 at Legacy Charter School. I was selected by the National Institute for Excellence in Teaching, which does all of the training for all of the principals and administrators throughout South Carolina, and well, throughout the nation, but in South Carolina particularly, for exemplary instruction in school, for getting my students to perform way and beyond. And I teach all black and brown students. I choose to teach my kids and low-income kids and kids that come from the same type of background, and they perform outstanding. They perform and bless my heart that I'm able to do that. I'm also in my educational setting. I'm at Hughes Middle School right now, where I run in a young men's and young women's leadership program. So our young men's program is called Impact. Our young women's program is called Empowerment, and we just train them in leadership. And they run programs, we do workshops, we bring leaders from the community to come in, and many of the leaders that we bring in, the professionals that we bring in, come from the same communities that they come from. A lot of the professionals we came in went to Hughes Middle School and came from what is called District 25, so they get to see what they can be, see people from the same environment that went through the same things, that can tell them the same stories, and that encourages them, that inspires them. And then these young men come back, and the young women who come and speak come back and share with them, tutor with them, do programming with them. One of the programs we did recently was just simply a tie day, where professionals came in the community and met with our young men and just taught them how to do ties. Many of our young men have never even worn a tie. Many of their fathers have never even worn a tie or taught them how to wear a tie. So that's some of the work that I'm doing right now locally with my firm, is where I get to do most of my community impact. And so one of the things we do with our firm is planning. And so one of the things we do is environmental justice. So I work with two communities in Charleston. One is the Lamsey community area, which is outside the new port. And so the port is surrounded by a bunch of minority communities, but there's no environmental justice program to make sure that those communities who are impacted by all of those ships and the emissions from those ships, all of those pollutants from all of the trucks that are coming back and forth. There's no mitigation, there's no health assessment, there's no health mitigation, there's no economic development programs tying that port into to those communities. And so we're working on that. There's another community we're working with, Rosemount community, and their community is around a chemical plant out of Germany. It's a multinational company from Germany that's in this community. And just last year alone, they had 6 spills that they failed to notify the community about, according to law, according to regulation. And so we're working with that community too, to make sure that they have an environmental justice mitigation piece. Another thing that we do is economic development. And so aside from affordable housing, which is one of our passions, we do African-American tourism. On February 17th in Greenville at Springfield Baptist Church, we'll be having an Upstate African-American Summit. So every year at the College of Charleston, we have a conference, but this year we're expanding it to go out into the regions. And what we do is we bring stakeholders together, we bring young entrepreneurs together, we bring young nonprofits together, we bring churches together, people who can benefit from African-American tourism, who can benefit from the tourism industry. And so churches who have historic products. We have festivals in our communities, old historic communities that are doing festivals, et cetera. There are resources, both from the PRT, from local visitor bureaus, et cetera. We bring these folks together to show the African-American community and entrepreneurs how they can tap into this industry. Because if we're going to develop our communities economically, we've got to tap into the engines that are driving our economy. We cannot just depend on minority business programs and procurement programs to develop our economy. We must tap into the sectors that are driving the engines that are driving South Carolina's economy. That's how we grow. And so that's one of the pieces we do. And then the last thing that we do is political development. So I have clients like Senator Carl Allen, Representative Wendell Jones in Greenville, City Councilwoman Lillian Brock Fleming. In Charleston, we have Representative Marvin Pendarvis, Representative Wendell Gilliard, who's pushing the hate crime bill that passed the House and got stalled in the Senate. And so we're behind a lot of this. We write policy, we do marketing, we do promotions, we do messaging, we do get out the vote, et cetera. So we can do everything, or we can just do a small piece. And so that is our piece as it relates to politics. But the Black agenda, and I've been touching on it. As you know, you see with my firm, that's what we're about. Our firm is about building a self-sustainable community through the clients we serve, all right? And so the Black agenda, if we're really gonna motivate our African-American community, I'd like to highlight on 3 pieces. Economic development. And for me, we must, if we're going to really improve the lives of African Americans, must address economic empowerment in our communities. We must address workforce development in our community. So a living wage, that's one of my passions. In South Carolina, there are 2 ways to get to a living wage. And in South Carolina, legislatively, we've got an uphill, we have an uphill battle trying to get this legislature to pass a livable wage, right? $15, $16, $17 an hour. That's going to be hard. But the other way, the other policy way to get members of my community, the young men in my community who are susceptible to crime, either perpetuating it or being victims of it, the only way to stop that is by giving them skills and jobs and credentials so that they can access living wage jobs. And so in our local communities, that's what we have to hold our local elected officials accountable for. Where are the job training programs for these companies that are producing living wage jobs in our community, that are getting these tax incentives and these tax breaks to come into our community? Where are the workforce training programs in our community? And if your elected officials aren't actively working on that from the local and that city and the county, and your state elected officials aren't working to make those happen, all right, and creating partnerships with the local technical colleges, which can provide a lot of those credentials, all right? If they're not working on those, then you have to hold them accountable. The next second piece that is a cornerstone for the Black agenda is education and closing the educational gap. Right now, we have a lot of talk from Moms of Liberty talking about all these cultural issues, and no one is pushing back saying that you're getting off what the real issue is. The real issue is that, you know, African-American boys, African-American girls, Latino boys, Latino girls are only reading at grade level at 30 to 35%. And that's across the board throughout the state, from Greenville to Greenwood to Charleston to the PD. And when it comes to math, it is even worse. We must address this through policy, through training, through after-school programming. And if your politicians aren't talking about this, if your party is not talking about this, and luckily yours is, and I'm so proud of you guys as the Greenwood Democratic Party, so impressed on how you deal with the issues and push the issues. You don't have a meeting where issues are not discussed to the forefront. I've been through parties throughout the state, and that is not the case. And you should be proud of yourselves and your leadership, that you address the issues that we're talking about here today. All right. And the last piece that I would want to talk about is health care. All right. I'm an advocate for Medicare for all. I'm a big, please give that a round of applause. All right. But when you talk about the Black community and you talk about disparities, it must be addressed. And when you talk about the danger that African-American children and African-American women face by the neglect from our healthcare system, it must be addressed, and it must be addressed with passion and anger, because this is our lives. And so in closing, let's say that if we're going to really increase African-American voter turnout and reverse the trend, we as a party must get serious about addressing the African-American agenda, the issues in the African-American community, and holding our elected officials accountable so that the people who are not voting, including registered voters, the number of registered voters that aren't voting continues to go up. The number of registered people who aren't registered, who are just disillusioned with the process, continues to go up. If we're going to turn that around, they've got to see us fighting for them. They've got to see us out there fighting for them. They've got to see our elected officials fighting for them. They've got to see the party fighting for them. And then the trend will turn. It will reverse. God bless you. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer any.
Ready with the microphone for questions. Anything for Mr. Campbell? We got one back here.
Hello, everybody. I've addressed this before. Sir, have you ever heard the movie Silver Dollar Road?
No.
Okay, well, that deals with exactly what you're talking about. Anytime a book or a play or a movie comes out about something, a lot of times it opens people's eyes. It's a Hollywood production about a family on the coast of North Carolina who loses their land to a slick land developer that's been in their family for over 200 years. At one time, I think 95,000 acres were owned by African Americans in the South. and they were in the movies about swindling them out of the land and how they fight to get the land back. This has happened on Hilton Head, Edisto, Big Sandy. There's a family that owns Greenwood that owns Hilton Head, so I won't get into that. The second thing, what was the other one you brought up? The last subject, healthcare.
Healthcare.
On the national news, black women are dying in hospitals when they're having children because they go in perfectly healthy and are being ignored by the staff. Some lady died of something as common as sepsis because she was ignored by the staff. So this is something that I agree with you should happen to anybody, but it's absolutely nuts. But go to see Silver Dollar, because I haven't seen it, unfortunately, but it addresses this very problem. And there's also a lady on PBS that has done this too and gotten a lot of her land back and a lot of other people's lands back. And it usually has to do with property tax and people coming in and taking it for that reason. But thank you for the time.
Thank you to our guest speaker, Ken. Thank you. We have another question over here. Wonderful.
Thank you for coming to speak to us.
Thank you for having me.
As an educator, I'm just wondering if there is a way to meet these young parents who are sending their children with not knowing how to read or write, because I think that's where we are falling back, because the young parents don't even know that you can read to your child before they start school. Take them to the library, even if picture books. I'm just asking as a consultant, can you find a way of bringing these young women and young fathers to a group so you can educate them about their children?
So, yes, we have a responsibility to educate and do some things, but you have to remember too that this just did not start, right? A lot of the parents of my children don't have an education, all right? And so it's a holistic problem, and we have to deal with the whole family, right? We have to also nurture that mother, nurture that father, get them that workforce skills, workforce training skills, right? We have to get them into GED programs as well. Again, that's what the Black Agenda is about. So when we talk about education, we're not just talking about the child. We're talking about that family and the community, creating institutions where we can, bring our parents in. At Legacy Charter School, where I was working, that's something we did, and it didn't last long, but we did attempt that because we didn't have more resources, and we were doing it all from within the school. But if we had more resources, we would have been able to bring in those tutors for those parents and give those parents not only workshops on education, but parenting skill workshops. We were doing parenting skills as well. With a nonprofit, and so again, it's a holistic. We have to deal with the whole family, not just the child, but the parents, the child, that community.
All right, another round of applause for Kwadjo. Thank you for visiting us this morning. Thank you. There was a question that I meant to ask. How do you do all those things in just one person? You don't have clones of yourself running around doing all that? That was incredible.
How did that start off? By saying that I serve food and you provide me with a supernatural ability.
Oh my gosh, supernatural is definitely the answer. Thank you. I will be studying your talk today, as a prospective candidate who aims to be sitting in that seat of power and wants to be held accountable for that power. I'm going to be studying and make sure I don't stray from those things the people want, because I don't need you knocking on my door, causing some trouble. I want you to knock and say, "Good job, Representative Kimmler."